So today we're going to be dealing with Joshua chapter 21, faith to serve. And so the mindset behind this is sometimes the blessing is in serving. And so last week we talked about the sanctuary cities where you have the faith to flee. And now in this chapter, it's coming full circle where now they are giving out all of the cities to the Levites. And so for the mindset for today, or the focus for today, is going to be on a servant's heart, a servant's heart. So it's going to be a lot of scripture covered today, so I hope you got some ink in your pen. But I'm just going to read the beginning and the end of Joshua chapter 21 because the majority of the chapter just deals with who gave the Levites what territory and where they were. So it doesn't focus on the Levites themselves and being in service. So I'm going to read chapter 21, verses 1 through 3. And it says, the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites came to Eleazar the priest, and to Joshua the son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the people of Israel. And they said to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, the Lord commanded through Moses that we be given cities to dwell in, along with their pasture lands for our livestock. So by command of the Lord, the people of Israel gave to the Levites the following cities and pasture lands out of their inheritance. Verses 41 through 45. And it says, the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the people of Israel were in all 48 cities with their pasture lands. These cities each had its pasture lands around it. So it was with all these cities. Thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers, and they took possession of it, and they settled there. And the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them, for the Lord had given all their enemies into their hands. Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass. And so this all started back in the book of Exodus, and these are the promises being fulfilled to where they finally in the promised land and they're settling in. And so the Levites have cities in the midst of all the territories to where they are taking care of the priestly duties of God. And so I want us to think about that. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about a servant's heart. Now with the Levites, so it's one thing for us to serve. We serve God, but we still have our lives. We serve God in the midst of our 9 to 5, in the midst of things we do with our families, in the midst of all these other things. But the Levites, their lives were to serve God. That was their duty. That was their duty. So that's where they were in the midst of the city, serving, taking care of God's people. And so to be able to do something like that, that takes a servant's heart. That takes a servant's heart. And so, as I always say, I invite us to be honest with ourselves. It's just us and God. We don't have to raise our hand or go through any of that, but we know. And I always encourage us, when God convicts us, lean into that. When he convicts us, lean into that. Don't start making excuses. Don't start trying to go in a different direction, because he's convicting us to try to correct us and get where we need to be. And so as I go forth on these different points, if you look at yourself and you say, hey, I may have this point and that point, but I don't have those others, then I encourage you to say, I need to go to that next level. I need to make sure that I have a servant's heart, because that's the key thing about us as Christians. And so in Exodus chapter 32, verses 26 through 29, I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read verse 29. And so verse 29 says, "For Moses had said, consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day." So this is the first commissioning of the Levites. And so verses 26 through 29, it talks about how after Moses was up on the mountain and then he came back down, and Aaron had made the golden calf, and they were down here partying and worshiping the golden calf. Then Moses came before the people and said, who is on God's side? And it says that the Levites came forth, and they raised their hands and they came over, and they were there saying, we are. And he had them go forth, and he had them go through the camp and kill those who had been participating within the worshiping the calf and the partying and all these different things. And so it says that they went through the camp and they killed about 3,000 people, but this was the start of him commissioning the Levites. And so it said that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And so this is where it started. In Numbers chapter 3, verses 11 and 12, it says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Behold, I have taken the Levites from among the people of Israel, instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the people of Israel. The Levites shall be mine." So he's letting it be known right there that these are going to be my holy people. These are going to be my priests that are going to go forth and serve. And so once again, if God has consecrated you and set you apart for service, there has to be some things in your heart going on, because being a servant of God is not for the faint of heart. It takes us getting to that point where John the Baptist said, where they were telling him once Jesus came, and they were telling him, hey, Jesus is out here stealing your thunder, basically. He's talking to the people and everything, and he said, I told you Jesus was coming. He said, I must decrease so he can increase. And so this is the thing with us. We have to be mindful of to see how much of us is still showing and going forth in our actions versus people being able to see Christ. And so this is where we go into a servant's heart. Point number one, a servant's heart must want to serve. In Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45, it says, "And Jesus called them to him and said to them, You know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So he's telling them right now that if you're trying to be great, greatness is not with you leading the charge and being out front and have everybody looking at you and thinking you're doing such great things. No, you're a servant. You are serving the people. And you know, sometimes we look at service like that's one of the low things to be doing. But they have Jesus himself telling them, hey, I'm God. But I didn't come to have everybody running up to me like I'm some movie star and like, oh man, what is it like? No, I came to serve. I have a purpose. And he's letting them know this. You have to get into this mindset and this heart set too. Jesus wanted to serve. It wasn't just somewhere you're like, well, I guess today I'll go out and help some people. You have to want to do that. And in John chapter 13, verses 12 through 17, it says, when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, remember, listen to what I'm saying. I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So he just told him, I'm giving you an example of servanthood. And just think about that. Right now, if we got out some buckets and water and then just start telling people, hey, we need you to come up and wash feet. I don't think we're going to be lining up saying, yes, let me get to the front. No, I think we're going to be like, we're going to try to slip out the back. I would, Pastor, but, I got a previous engagement and the baby hungry. And, we're going to come up with all kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm not too keen on touching other people's feet. I don't really touch my feet unless I have to. So that's not something that we do, but he's showing them it's humility. He's showing them humility to be able to say, you've got to get past any of you. You got to get past that and focus on the purpose, focus on the mission. I'm giving you an example of how to be a servant, how to have a servant's heart. And you've got to want to do this. And point number 2, a servant's heart must be willing to serve. A servant's heart must be willing to serve. And so I'm going to go back to Mark chapter 10, verse 45. It says, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. He was willing to give his life. If you're not willing to sacrifice for the cause of Christ, then you need to go back and rethink some of these things. Because remember, it talks about us being persecuted for the name of Christ. So therefore, if we're part of this team, these things are coming. And then we have to ask ourselves that question. When we see some of these things that are before us that may happen because we are standing for the cause of Christ, are we willing to go forth in spite of those things? Or do we see those things and say, I'm going to back up on that one. I don't know about that one. But Jesus didn't do that. He says, and give his life as a ransom for many, which he did. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 39, it says, and going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. He said to the Father, he prayed to God the Father, let this cup pass from me. But if not, your will be done, not my will. He didn't say, hey, if this cup doesn't pass from me, I don't know if I can go forth. He didn't say that. He showed that this is not necessarily what he wanted to do. He knew he was called to do this, but he said, but hey, it's not about my will. It's about your will. Do we have that in our heart? That willingness to serve when God calls us into uncomfortable situations, calls us into situations to where it may throw off our everyday thing, bring us out of our comfort zone, sometimes even put us in an unsafe environment. Are we willing to go forth and trust in God and say, you're sending me here? I'm going to willingly go because this is what a servant does. This is what's in a servant's heart. I'm willing to go where you send me. And that's why I have nothing but the utmost praise and respect for missionaries. Because I know all the time, I'm just like, if God ever called me to missionary work and halfway around the world, we may have to have a few conversations where like, God, are you sure? Let me make sure I need to be in prayer, kind of be like Gideon. Let it be wet today. Okay, once more. Let it be dry tomorrow. I would have to really go back before him and say, is this really it? But they go. So once again, this is not just you're moving to another state away from your family or things you're familiar with. This is unfamiliar territory. This is many times like a whole nother world. You don't have a Walmart down the street. You don't have a Snooks around the corner. You can't just go to Mercy when something is going on. They don't have a lot of these things. And for you to go when God sends you, that says a lot. That says so much. And that's why I cannot even fathom what that takes to do that. But I see so many of them, they go and they're like, God told me to go, and I went. They had a willing heart. I know many times when I'm in conversations with people about different things, that's one of the things I always point out to them. They don't have a willing heart. Within situations, whether it may be forgiveness, whether it may be changing something, whether it may be, hey, you need to stop that so you can line up with God. They don't have a willing heart. But when you have a willing heart, it opens so many more doors. As I said at the beginning of the sermon, sometimes the blessing is in serving. So you think about that. Remember, I always tell you, our Christian walk, it's not about us. It's not about us. It's about others. It's about us. How can we be God's hands and feet if we aren't serving? How can we be salt and light if we are not serving? And he just said that I came from heaven down here to serve. So I think it's a theme going on within the scripture to where we can't overlook that about service. But if you think about that, if we're in service as God has called us to be in service, that's where the blessing is going to be, because you're where God has you. You're where God has called you to be. So check your heart and see if maybe there are some areas going on right now where you're just not willing. He's called you to do something, but you're just not willing to change up that thing. I know he does that with me, from time to time with different things. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that. I'm just thinking it's just something that I'm seeing or thinking. But then it's like, after it happens a few times, I'm like, okay, that's God. That's God putting this on my heart and putting this before me. And so check and see if you are not having a willing heart. And so point number 3, a servant's heart must be watching to serve. It must be watching to serve. In Matthew 25, verses 31 through 40, it reads, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on the right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly, I say to you, as you did this to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Watching. A servant's heart is always watching to see what's going on around them, to see who may be in need. We can't just be in our own little bubble. We can't just be focused on what's going on in our lives. I mean, and I'll be honest with me, when I get focused on something, I'm deep in it a lot of times. If I'm reading something or watching something or I'm thinking about something, and sometimes, a niece may walk up and just scare my socks off. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, what? I just walked up. That's you. You need to, why are you jumpy? I'm like, I was deep in thought. I was deep in something, and you threw off my groove. And so that's how it goes. But when we're out and about and things like that, or you're talking to someone and they're telling you about a certain situation, or you sit up saying, maybe I can help with that situation. They just talked about a need. You may see somebody out on the street struggling, may see an elderly woman struggling with bags, and you go help her because you're looking, you're watching to see who may have a need to where you can help. As he said, they just were taking care of the needs of others. They saw people in need and they went and helped. Like with the tornadoes that happened a few months ago. People just went out and helped. There's going to be opportunities to help. So it's not a situation to where we're just like, I wonder who is going to go help? Or should I just get in my car and just go driving around and see who I can help? No, that there are organizations and churches with things set up to where they're just like, hey, we got our emergency crew set up and now we're going out to help. And people go out and help. They saw the need and they felt it in their heart. I need to do something. I need to go help somebody. I'm sitting up at home watching TV with my feet propped up and I click it on the channel and I see these things going on. How can I not? Are we watching? Are these things just passing us by? Do we sit there and see these things on the channel and just say, oh man, that's messed up. I'm going to pray for them. It's good to pray for them. No, don't get me wrong. But if you can do something to help, wouldn't that be just that much more greater? To know that somebody has this need going on and it was above their means and it was a situation to where they didn't know how they were going to get out of it. But you were watching, you were listening, and when that came across your radar, there you were watching and you stepped in and say, well, hey, I can go down before I go to work today and go down and help move some of the debris out the street. Some may think that's not a big deal, but if there's a tree and debris blocking the front of the street so people can't even get to their houses, that's a big deal not to be able to drive down to your house. We may think it's small, but you go down and help move that debris, you just made their life a whole lot better. Somebody may be elderly or have disabilities, and they can't park a block away and walk to their home. So that little thing that you thought was insignificant changed everything. But you know it because you were watching. So a servant's heart is watching and looking to see where someone may be in need and that they can help them. And number 4, a servant's heart must be working to serve. You got to be working to actually be serving. And so in Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 38, Now, these are the famous verses that most people know about. And this is my go-to when I'm looking at, get myself back out there to make sure I'm helping and encourage others to help. And so it says, and Jesus went throughout the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Now, I know we all are familiar with that verse. I know sometimes we may quote it to people in different situations. But if you look throughout the Gospels, here and there, you always see Jesus doing things where he's healing, where he's helping, where he's talking to people and helping them gain spiritual insights and things like that. But when you look at this chapter in particular, before he got down to this part and talked to the disciples, this is what he did early in the chapter. He healed a paralytic. He healed the woman who had the issue of blood. He resurrected a little girl who had died. He healed 2 blind men. And there was a demon-oppressed man who was mute, who he healed. He cast out the demon, and after that, he was able to talk. So mind you, remember, the disciples are walking with him while he's doing all of this. And so he's doing all of these things. He's working. He was working a lot. So I don't know how far and in between those things happened as they were going along. It could have been something to where all these things happened over a couple of days. It could have been something to where all these things happened within a week. But these were things that happened before he talked to them about saying, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Don't just brush it off. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he sends workers out into the harvest. This is his inner circle. And so they should be the first line of defense and gathering other people up to come in. It's kind of just like us. We attend this church, and so we normally go out and we invite people to come to church. And so that's how I go. We are the first line. If we're not inviting people, sometimes people come in. I don't want to say that's the only way, but I'm just saying, if we were inviting people, it's like we are the first line. We are here. So we want them to be able to come in. And so this is him talking to them. You see what I'm out here doing? You see the need out here? So having a service heart, you should want to work. As men, we know when it comes to sports, we know what the line "put me in, coach" means, don't we? We all know that as men. We've sat on the bench and we sitting there like, man, this is the number 1 point guard in, and he just got all kind of handles in it. Be like, man, I'm never going to get to play with him out there. But then he may have played all game. He's like, coach, I'm tired. It's like, you sitting there like, coach, I'm telling you, hey, he looked tired. Put me in, coach. We want to be in the game. Do we have that same mindset and heart set now? Do we want to be in the game? Do we want to be able to get out here and work? If we're not thinking that, then once again, we need to realize that we have to find some work to do. And I'm just going to say this, there are big, small, anything. God can use you in any situation that can make a big difference. I'm telling you, sometimes I was in the airport a couple weeks ago, whatever. Now, you know, Anise does all the traveling and everything, but she was gone before me, so it was almost like Home Alone. I was almost in the airport like, help, help. And I was looking for some things in the Atlanta airport because there's all kind of stuff going on. And I'm just like sitting up and I'm like, ask people, excuse me, which way to this, that, and other? Man, that was a big deal to me. That was a big deal to me to get me from point A to point B before people was looking like, well, this is a grown man looking like a little lost child. This is sad. This is so sad to see. But it was big to me because what they didn't know is I usually just follow her blindly. I don't look at signs, nothing. I'm just like, she like, go, we're going this way. Okay, and you go, come, no, cut back there. I'm like, okay. I don't travel alone. That is my traveler. My traveling buddy. And so any little thing can help. So don't look at anything as too small or that you have to do something big. All you have to do is look for something to get your hands and feet busy to be working. And then the last thing, a servant's heart wants to hear well done. A servant's heart wants to hear, well done. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 23, it says, for it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 more talents. So also who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. Isn't that what we're doing? We want to stand before God one day and hear him say, well done, thy good and faithful servant. But to hear that, once again, we have got to be serving. But we can't serve unless we have a servant's heart. If we don't have a servant's heart, we aren't going to be able to serve. So I'll close with this. I'm going to look at the rest of that chapter because these were the servants that were called into his rest, who were told, enter into the joy of your master. But in verses 24 through 30, it says, he also who had received the 1 talent came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gathered where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For anyone who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, in the place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So there is more than one kind of servant. As you saw here, he called him wicked and slothful and worthless servant. He didn't tell him, enter into the joy of your master. So either we're serving God, we're serving the devil, or we're serving ourselves. One of the three. And we have to ask ourselves who we're serving, because we see at the end what will come about. One will be told, enter my joy, and one will be cast out in outer darkness. But as I said, it goes back to having a servant's heart. So ask yourself those questions. Do you want to serve? Are you willing to serve? Are you watching for opportunities to serve? Are you working in the harvest? And do you want to hear Jesus say to you one day, well done, thy good and faithful servant? So I think if we all ask ourselves those questions and we're honest about it, we take the time to see where we are. And then after we see that, we go forth and put things in order on what God has set before us. We'll be all right, because we know that we'll have the servant's heart and we will be carrying out the calling placed before us, and we will hear that, well done, thy good and faithful servant, one day. Amen? Amen. Amen.